The Basement Tenant, a novel, written by L.Z. Sinclaire, narrated by L.Z. Sinclaire. Chapter 15, Contact. The kiss happened on a Saturday, and Carrie could not have said afterward who moved first. She'd been drinking one glass. She was always one glass now, one precise, measured glass that proved she was in control, though the fact that she measured it so carefully was itself a form of the thing she was trying to disprove. The Sinclaire, the expensive one, the one she bought because letting go of the wine would mean letting go of the woman who chose it, and she wasn't ready for that, might never be ready for that. Elias came up at midnight through the interior door, which she'd stopped latching a week ago, a decision she'd made without making it, the way you make most of the decisions that matter. He appeared in the kitchen doorway in a black t-shirt and gray sweatpants, his feet bare on the cold hardwood. And he looked at her, and she looked at him, and the air between them had the specific density of a conversation that had been building for weeks and was about to collapse under its own weight. "You've been listening," he said. "Yes." "Every night?" "Most nights." He leaned against the door frame. His arms were crossed, but loosely, not defensively, more like he was holding himself together, keeping the contents in place. "What do you hear?" "You know what I hear." "I want to know what you think it means." She set the wine down. "I think there's a woman in my basement. I think you know she's there. I think you've been lying to me since the day you signed the lease. And I think—" She stopped, because the next part of the sentence was the part she couldn't say out loud without hearing how it sounded, and how it sounded was insane, and she was so tired of being afraid of sounding insane. "You think what?" "I think you were put here. I think someone sent you." His face didn't change, but something behind it did. A shift in the architecture, like a building settling. He uncrossed his arms. He stepped into the kitchen. She didn't move back. She registered the decision not to move, and then registered that she'd made it without deciding. The body answering a question the mind was still composing. 3 feet, 2 feet. Her hand tightened on the wine glass. She didn't pick it up. "Carrie," her name in his mouth. That voice, low, warm, too close, always too close, mixed forward in a way that made her feel like he was speaking directly into the space behind her sternum. "If I told you the truth right now, you wouldn't believe me. Try me. If I told you the truth, it would put you in danger." "I'm already in danger. My ex-husband is taking my son. My mother told a court I'm hearing voices. My neighbors have decided I'm damaged goods. What danger could you possibly add?" "The kind that doesn't come with a legal filing." They were close enough now that she could feel the warmth of him. Not touching, not yet, but present, a temperature differential in the cold kitchen. She could see the fine scar along his jawline, the pulse in his throat, elevated, she noted, the way a journalist notes a detail before understanding what it means. His eyes, which she thought were black, were the darkest possible brown, the kind of brown that held other colors if you looked long enough. She was looking. She needed to stop looking. She didn't stop. "Tell me who you are," she said. "I can't." "Tell me what's in the basement." I can't. Tell me something, anything. Give me one true thing. He looked at her. The kitchen was very quiet. The clock on the wall ticked. The radiator hissed. He was close enough now that she could feel his breath against her mouth, and she thought, I could move. I could say something sharp. I could pick up the wine glass, and this would not happen. She thought this clearly and with full awareness. She didn't move. This, he said, and kissed her. It was not gentle. It was the opposite of gentle. The release of pressure that had been building behind a wall too thin to hold it. And when the wall went, it went completely. His hand was in her hair, fingers curling against the back of her skull, the pressure of it tilting her head back, and she let it. And the letting was the part she would think about afterward, the specific, irrevocable moment when her body gave its answer before her mind had finished forming the question. He walked her back a step, 2 steps, until her spine met the edge of the counter, and she didn't stop him, and he didn't stop, and her hands moved up from his shirt to his jaw, his neck. She was pulling him closer. She was doing this. She was making this choice. And the careful internal monologue she'd been maintaining for 14 months went completely, terrifyingly silent. His mouth was warm. He tasted like coffee and something darker, something that lived underneath the clinical composure and the careful words, a rawness, a hunger that matched her own, and the matching was what undid her. She made a sound she hadn't planned, something small and involuntary, swallowed almost before it escaped, the sound of a woman who has been very quiet for a very long time. She wasn't being seduced, she was being met, and the difference was devastating. She broke it, not because she wanted to, because she heard voices. Not the voice in the basement, the voices in her head, her mother's writing to a judge about instability, Vanessa's performing concern at school pickup, Derek's attorney documenting erratic behavior, the chorus of her own life, the Greek tragedy of surveillance and judgment that followed her from the courtroom to the school to her own kitchen, and now this. Her mouth on a stranger's mouth, her back against the counter, her hands in his hair, in the house that was the last thing she had, and if anyone saw, if anyone knew. She stepped back. Her hand went to her mouth, not in shock, in containment, holding in whatever sound was still trying to escape, whatever truth the kiss had dislodged from the place she'd been keeping it. Her hair was a wreck. She was aware of this in the specific, absurd way you're aware of minor things when a major thing has just happened. I can't, she said. I know. This can't happen. You understand that. This can't. I know. He didn't reach for her. He didn't try to close the distance. He stood where she'd left him, and the look on his face was the look of a man who had breached his own protocols and was already calculating the cost. His hands were at his sides. His breathing was controlled, but his shirt was twisted where her hands had been, and his hair was slightly disordered, and the evidence of it was its own kind of record. Only his eyes betrayed him. Wide, dark, holding something that looked like regret or relief, the ambiguity so precise it had to be intentional. He went back down. The interior door closed, not a slam, a click, a measured, deliberate click that was louder than any slam could have been. Carrie stood in the kitchen. She touched her lips. She poured the remaining wine down the sink. She went to bed. At 2 a.m., The singing started again, louder this time. The woman in the basement, the voice, the presence, the impossible fact that Carrie could no longer rationalize or dismiss, sang in the dark beneath her bedroom floor, and the melody was clear enough now that Carrie could almost follow it, almost recognize it, and the nearness of recognition was its own kind of torment. She lay in the dark and realized the thing she was most afraid of wasn't the voice in the basement. It wasn't Derek's filing or her mother's letter or the systematic dismemberment of her social world by women who smiled while they cut. It was that she was becoming someone Lincoln Park couldn't contain, someone the narrative couldn't hold. Someone who kissed a stranger in her kitchen at midnight and wanted to do it again and didn't know if the wanting was real or if it was just another version of the woman she'd always been, the woman who defined herself through proximity, who collected experiences, who mistook feeling for understanding. Cynthia Weaver's words, the ones she'd heard secondhand, the ones Derek had thrown at her during one of their last fights. That girl collects experiences. Make sure you're not one. Was Elias an experience? Was she collecting him? She didn't know. She pressed her hand to her mouth where the taste of him lingered, and she didn't know. She didn't sleep. At 3 a.m., she got up and went to the bathroom and looked at herself in the mirror. Really looked, the way you look at a person you're trying to understand. The face that looked back was not the face she'd been constructing for 14 months. The composed face, the stable face, the face that said, "I am coping," to judges and school mothers and therapists. This face was undone. Hair tangled, mascara she'd forgotten to remove smudged under her eyes, lips swollen. She thought she was imagining it, but no, they were swollen. And the swelling was proof, was evidence, was the body's record of what had happened in the kitchen. She touched her reflection. The glass was cold under her fingertip. She thought about the first time she'd kissed Derek at that Tribune newsroom party, 2013, against a wall in the hallway near the vending machines, with the confidence of a woman who didn't yet know that desire could be a cage. That kiss had been the beginning of a story she'd told herself for a decade. The story of Carrie Whitfield becoming Carrie Whitfield Weaver, of a woman from Winnetka marrying into the South Side and making it mean something, of progressive love as identity, as credential, as the answer to a question she'd never been brave enough to ask directly. The question was the same one her mother had never asked. Eleanor Whitfield ran the Winnetka household the way a person runs a public relations campaign. Controlled, consistent, never off message. The house always presentable, the voice always steady, the feelings organized into a form that could be served to guests. Carrie had watched this as a child with the specific attention of a child who understands without having the language for it that what she is watching is a performance and not a life. She had thought, "I will not be that." She had meant it. And then she had built a life that was also a performance for a different audience with different props, and she had told herself that the difference was that at least she had chosen hers. Her mother had written to a judge about instability. The letter was measured, sympathetic, clinically precise, the work of a woman who knew how to make something look like concern from the outside. It was also a letter that chose the appearance of a stable family over a daughter who needed help. And it was the least surprising thing Eleanor Whitfield had ever done. And that was what Carrie pressed her mouth to her mind about. Not the betrayal, the recognition. The kiss with Elias was different. It wasn't the beginning of a story, it was the destruction of one. Every carefully constructed wall she'd been maintaining, the landlord-tenant boundary, the custody battle caution, the racial self-consciousness that made her monitor her own desire like a surveillance system, all of it had collapsed in the 3 seconds between "give me one true thing" and the moment his mouth met hers. And the collapse had felt not like failure, but like architecture being returned to its materials. Brick to clay, wood to tree. The constructed self dismantled, and underneath it, the person who had been there all along, wanting what she wanted, afraid of the wanting, more afraid of the not wanting. She went back to bed. She lay in the dark and listened to the singing. Margaret's voice she would learn later, but for now, just a woman singing in a room she couldn't see. And the singing was the saddest, most beautiful thing she had ever heard, and she pressed her face into the pillow and let the sound wash over her and thought, I am not who I was. I am not who they say I am. I am becoming something else, and the becoming is terrifying, and I would not stop it if I could. At 5 a.m., she got up and went to the kitchen and made coffee and sat at the table in the gray pre-dawn light and thought about what she knew and what she didn't know and the distance between the two. She knew there was a woman's voice in the basement. She knew it was present when Elias was gone. She knew the corporate structure that had renovated her basement was connected to Derek's company. She knew the scratch marks on the closet door were recent and human. She knew the police had found nothing because the police had looked where they were told to look and nowhere else. She knew she had kissed a man who lived in her basement. She knew the kiss had been the most honest thing that had happened to her in 14 months. She knew honesty and wisdom were not the same thing, and that the gap between them was where most of the damage in her life had occurred. She opened the Notes app on her phone. The list was there, the log of Elias's comings and goings, the record she'd been keeping since the first week. She scrolled through it, dates, times, sounds, the architecture of surveillance, built by a woman who didn't trust what she was hearing and needed the structure of data to make it feel real. She added a new entry, Saturday, 12:03 a.m., kissed the tenant. Duration, unclear. Initiated by, unclear. Regret level, unclear. Danger level, extreme. She stared at the entry. Then she deleted it. Then she typed it again. Then she deleted it again because the act of recording it made it evidence, and evidence was what destroyed women in custody proceedings. And she was not going to destroy herself over a kiss, no matter how much the kiss had felt like the first true thing she'd done since the divorce. She didn't know who Elias was. Not really. Not beneath the name and the residency and the careful composure and the taste of his mouth, which she could still feel, which was going to be a problem. She picked up her phone. She scrolled to the number she'd saved from the officer's card. Not the patrol number, the detective number that she'd found on the CPD website at 3 a.m. one night during the insomnia hours that had become her most productive research time. Area 3, Violent Crimes, Detective Ava Ruiz. She dialed before she could talk herself out of it. The phone rang 6 times and went to voicemail. She hung up, called again. This time, 3 rings. Ruiz. The voice was flat, professional, the tone of a person who answered calls the way a boxer answered the bell, automatically, braced for impact. Detective Ruiz, my name is Caroline Whitfield Weaver. I'm calling about my basement tenant. A pause. The sound of something, a chair maybe, or a body shifting weight. I'm listening, Ruiz said. The end. You have been listening to The Basement Tenant, written by L.V. Sinclaire, narrated by L.V. Sinclaire. Thank you for listening.